Just for the record, your name and just give me a brief summary of yourself.
My visit to TT, Trinidad and Tobago, is part of my global research on the ground, not just by watching a video or watching a documentary or reading a book or something like that. And I want to understand humanity in its totality. That's why I'm on a global tour, not just in one country, one culture, one people, but in all of them. The Caribbean is part of humanity, so I cannot just ignore the Caribbean and talk about all other regions. And that's my motivation.
I see. Based on what you learned of Trinidad and Tobago in your studies so far, what do you think? Because we are in a very, I don't want to say precarious, but we are in a very interesting part of our history at this point. You see one of our closest neighbors, Venezuela, the unrest that's going on over there. Just recently we had to put one of our gas deals on hold as a result of US sanctions against Venezuela.
The Dragon,
the Dragon gas
pipeline.
deal. What are your thoughts on that?
This is a very good question. I was also interviewed on TV the other day here, and they asked me the same kind of question. I want to compare and contrast. I think that your mention of Venezuela is a very excellent example that I think that TT should avoid. I think that one of the major weaknesses in the political structure over here is that the different political parties, like the one of African descent and the one of Indian descent, somehow cannot work together, and they have a lot of divisions among them. So I think that one of the things that they need to avoid is to avoid the fate of Venezuela, your neighbor. The reason is because over there the opposition and the government cannot work together, and then you allow outside powers to come in and intervene. And every time when you allow outside powers to come in, look, you can see Yemen, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, and all that, Venezuela. Every time you have outside powers to come in, they encourage the opposition to fight, and go to war, fight, and supply you money, weapons, and all that. You destroy your own country. So I think that one of the crucial lessons that the people here in TD should learn is that you need to avoid the fate of Venezuela. You may disagree with each other and try to find some solution out of that. I know it's difficult, it's easier to say. I know that. But what other choice do you have? Do you want to go ahead and have this kind of violent unrest, opposition, destroy the entire country? Look at all these years, a waste of opportunities, because the opposition is allowed to be funded by outside powers. Outside powers come in not because they care about you, they care about themselves. And they use the opportunity to divide and conquer. That's true in human history, everywhere you go. So I know that whatever problem that you have, my advice to you is that try to resolve it as peacefully as you can. Violent, unrest, protests, and all this kind of thing is not going to ever too much in the end.
That's a very interesting point you raised in terms of your message or your advice you would give to us here in Trinidad and Tobago. You are a very well-read individual, and you have a lot of accolades as an academic. Is there any other advice you would give to us or give to our leaders in authority as far as how to progress with our foreign policy in global politics?
Another thing I also noticed too is that everything has a cost and has a benefit. And therefore you cannot just copy other countries and other people for whatever you do. You need to come up with a solution which is uniquely yours. Because if you keep copying from the advanced countries, sometimes you end up copying their problems and their models which may not fit into yours. So I think that in the case of the uniqueness of TT, you can still focus on what you have been doing, like your natural resources, tourism, and all that. That is your natural strength. But do not try to say you must have what other country A, B, C, and D have because they are much more advanced than you are. So if you do not have what they have, then you are bad. I think that is very destructive. This is form of inferiority complex that smaller countries need to avoid. You need to be proud in terms of what you have and exploit what you have and be successful in your own way. Not that you must be like A, B, C, and D. I think that this is one of the major problems that I have encountered in many countries which are small, weak, less powerful. They look up to others, and in the process, they import too many problems and without solving the problems. That's my second my advice to you.
That's a very important point, and a lot of times we tend to fall in that trap of trying to model ourselves behind Western nations, and we end up inheriting their own problems. But shifting gears more towards economics now, we are an oil-rich nation. What I would like to know is, in terms of diversifying our economy, in a country our size, do you see any major challenges to that happening? We've been trying to diversify our economy for decades now, but with very little success. What is your advice in terms of
because I have been in more than 110 countries now all over the world, and I can make some contrasted comparison. Contrary to what you may think, Trinidad and Tobago is not that bad. In many ways, we are much, much better than many other countries that I have been in. Look at some of the countries in Africa. We are much, much more advanced than they are. In a way, Trinidad and Tobago is a middle-income country. It's not as rich as the US or the Scandinavia or China and all that, but in many ways, you are way ahead than many other very poor countries. Look up of your neighbor, Venezuela, or now Haiti, for example, Jamaica. I think in many ways you're much better than they are in terms of the economy. Now, answer the other part of the question, what are you going to do to diversify? I think that diversify is important, but on the other hand, I also think that you need to focus on what you are good at instead of trying to see what you should do. I copying other countries or other economies because you do not have what they have. But remember, no economy is perfect. Each economy is good in certain way, but bad in some other ways. They have certain strengths, but they have certain weaknesses. Look at Australia. Australia, many people do not know. Australia is not like China. China manufactures everything. But Australia, they don't manufacture much of anything. They export a lot of, let's say, agricultural products. And that's why Australia now is dependent on China for trade, because China import a lot of raw materials, agricultural products from, let's say, from Australia, and Australia in return import a lot of manufactured products from China. See, it's give and take. Each country has its own comparative advantage, for example. So you have to know what you are good at and what you are not good at. But don't think that, well, because you are not like the US, you therefore have to copy what the US has. But you are not the US, they are not you. Look at you, you are a journalist, right? How come you are not a basketball player? Are you going to be sad tomorrow? You need to diversify, you need to spend more time now to be a basketball player. Are you a soccer, a wrestler, a singer? You are not. But doesn't mean that you have to diversify now, spend half of your career in singing and half your career in playing basketball, but that's not your natural advantages. That's not your skills. That's not what you're good at. So in the case of TT, you have to say to yourself, what are you good at? What you are not good at? Those you are not good at, well, you do not focus on that. Focus on the thing that you are good at and import the thing that you are not good at. So don't think in this kind of mindset. I spoke to a lot of people here and also in many other countries too. They often look up at the major powers and say, well, they have that. We do not have that. Maybe we should have a spacecraft, send some workers into space too. We should do that also. Why they have to copy everything they do? Why not be happy with what you have? Focus on what you are good at. You can be very successful like that too. Look at Australia, Scandinavia, but many of them also do not manufacture much of anything. Do you know that?
Yeah.
But they live well, okay. So why do you not just do something that you are good at and do well on that? Then you will have money to buy what you need to buy.
Understood.
So don't have this kind of fixation. This is just an ideology. Yes, I'm not saying that diversification is not good. It can be good too, but do not exaggerate that. Put things into a proper perspective and try to see how you can use that to your advantage. But don't just to fixate the whole problem on the ideology of diversification. It's important, but do not exaggerate that. You understand me? Do that properly.
One of the things I needed to ask, because I believe that this impacts very seriously, so global trade and global migration.
Yes.
Recently we've had the outbreak of the coronavirus coming out of China. How do you anticipate that affecting trade and development on small island developing states like ourselves?
Number one, TT is a small country far away from China, so I'm not that concerned about the outbreak of the virus here in TT. That's number one. And number two, I think that the media has exaggerated the whole problem. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Throughout human history, you always have this kind of virus outbreak. At the beginning, it looked bad, but then over time, actually a few weeks and a few months, things will get better, and then things will get back to normality again. The same thing about this virus. This is not the first time in China that they have this kind of outbreak. A few years ago, more than 10 years ago, they have the flu outbreak, and they overcame too, and also in many other countries over time. In Africa, maybe you remember the Ebola virus too. So over time, things get bad, so don't exaggerate that again and think that, oh my God, this hell and the whole world is going to collapse. No, things will get better. This is just a small thing. It's not as serious. This is a media sensation. Now, and finally, the third point is about trade. We do have a problem now, by the way, that's even more serious than the virus outbreak, and that is protectionism. Diversification, by the way, is also a form of protectionism, just in case you do not know. Instead of focusing what you are good and what you're not good, and let's trade together, I benefit you, you benefit me, we diversify out of fear that somehow, because of politics or ideology and all that, maybe I will not get what I want, so I need to protect myself, but diversify just in case something happens. I'm on the safe side because I don't trust you, you don't trust me, you may be my enemy. This kind of thing of protectionism again. You blend the problem instead of working together, multiculturalism, multilateralism, and then we can trade more. I benefit you, you benefit me, and in the longer term we can get rich together. Now you think like that, so I have to diversify. I have to make sure that if something happens, I'm safe and all that. Always I don't trust you, you don't trust me. I don't like you, you don't like me. I diversify just in case something happens. So this kind of mentality is not good. This is exactly the mentality of Trump and many other people. Look at the UK, the same thing too. Brexit is a good example. So don't follow the bandwagon and try to understand. I understand that diversification again is not necessarily bad, but do not make that into like a fixation. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Everything has good and bad. It has two sides, but do not twist the argument to the point that now you exaggerate. All of a sudden you make a mess for yourself too. Instead of helping you, you are making things worse for yourself.
You come with a wealth of experience and knowledge. I think it was over 120 countries you visited. You have a number of different academic degrees. You're very competent at what you do. Do you intend during your visit to Trinidad to meet with any of our leaders in office to give them advice, perhaps just to start up some dialogue of what could be the first of many?
Yes and no. I also noticed that as an American, people are a bit more concerned that I may be coming over here to lecture people. And this is a no-no that I try to avoid, because as soon as you start doing that, it becomes politically problematic. But I also have another very unusual way to approach my research, which is that I also want to talk to people on the ground. I think in the end, they are even more important than people on the top, because people on the ground are the people, in many ways, they're the majority of the population, and they are often the final battleground of the future of the country. So by talking to many of those people like that, I learn more about humanity than otherwise. Now, you ask another question, could I be interested in talking to the elite? Yeah, why not? I'm not excluding anyone. My research, I spoke to a lot of different people on the top and the bottom. So my answer to you is yes, but no also, because I do not focus on that, because I think that there's a misguided. When you focus on the elites too much, you ignore many other problems on the street, and your advices and your solution may not be very realistic in the end, because you focus too much on them, those in power. But you forget the other side, and they are the majority of the population everywhere, and they are often the most important ones.
Just a follow-up question to that, in terms of not excluding anyone, our academics here at the University of the West Indies, at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, they also play a very important role in shaping and developing our future. Do you have any interest in perhaps partnering with them for your research in terms of data collection, analysis, and so on?
I have spoken to some people at the university already. So yes, I did that. In terms of data collaboration, I don't mind to collaborate with anyone. But the research that I'm doing, I don't need to have this kind of data that you may have in mind.
Okay.
The data that I have is more than sufficient. Just coming here and look at how things are, talk to different people, that is already a very rich laboratory research for me. Asking for official data from schools, from government sometimes is not helping you too much because many of those data are also very questionable. Just in case you do not know, in academia, just like in government, in anywhere else, there's also a lot of politics too. They are not so innocent as you may think. So be careful about the data that they give you. They will give you the data that you want to, or they want you to publish, or they want you to hear, but they will not give you the data that which can make them look very bad. But that's true about human nature. That's true about everywhere on earth. So I'm very careful about that. Do I exclude that? No, I do not. I welcome that. But I know the pitfall of all that kind of approach that can be they're quite dangerous to your, that could contaminate your research more than otherwise. Every time you go to an academia or government or civil society or NGO or anything and ask them for some data, be careful about the data that they give you. They have their own agenda too. But I'm not saying that you exclude that. Of course, I welcome that too. But I seldom rely or depend on this kind of data. Those, by the way, in many cases, are propaganda.
Indeed.
So you have to be very careful.
One thing I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you would have known this, but Trinidad and Tobago, I think we exceed the Caribbean in terms of the number of crimes per capita.
Yes.
Last year, I think we had the second highest murder toll, which was 539 people killed, and we also had a number of other non-violent offences, drug trafficking, and so on. When you look at small island developing states like Trinidad and Tobago and you see things like this, what is the interpretation from someone with your background?
Yes and no. I have been in so many countries and I know that criminalities have been with us throughout human history. I think that it's very misleading for you to focus on certain crimes and look at the data, see data propaganda again. You look at the data and you say, okay, there are so many more crimes here in Trinidad. Okay, that may be true, but how about some other forms of data, some other forms of crimes? In the US, for example, the US may not have so many petty crimes that you have, but in the US, there are also many other crimes. And all these politicians, by the way, and many of them are very corrupt too, but the media don't talk too much about that. So how do you interpret, you talk about interpretation, how do you label something as a crime? And some of the things are not crimes. Look at the US. Trump is impeached. You know that.
Yes.
Now, for his enemy, that is a crime. For his supporters, that's not a crime. In fact, he's serving the US national interest by fighting against corruption. You see, it's part of this interpretation of the data. So I'm very skeptical about all this data that you are throwing at me and some other people too. I'm not denying that it did not happen. I'm just saying that in terms of interpretation, in terms of understanding the perspective, things are not what you have in mind now. Does it mean that you support that? No, I'm not saying that you should support that. But I'm just saying that put things in the proper perspective.
I understand.
Look at Haiti, your neighbor. It's even worse than TT. Look at all this drug trafficking in the US, which you may not have as much by comparison. But the drug trafficking market in the US is the largest in the world. Now, when you compare with something like that, it sounds like a TT, which is a small potato by comparison. Look at crimes. Let's say major powers, they invade other countries, bomb other countries. Those are war crimes. But the major powers, because they dominate international politics and the international tribunals, they have never been prosecuted. They have not been arrested, those people in charge. And yet you spend all this time talking about how bad, how things are, the criminals, the crimes like this. This is not comparative. You understand me? So I think that, you see, that this is a question of interpretation again that you're just asking. I think that's a good question to ask, but I think that you have to look things from the proper perspective. Each country, by the way, they often have certain crimes. I have been in more than 120 countries, or 10 countries by now, and by the end of the tour, maybe more than 130 and 40. And everywhere I go, I see that each country, each society has certain crimes that they have a lot, but they don't have too much on some other crimes. You go to country B, you will see that they have a lot of crimes on B, but they don't have much on C.
Yeah.
So if you look only at C or B, then you give you the impression that that country is very, very bad because they have so many crimes on B. But if you look at C, D, E, F, G, oh, they don't have too many. And all of a sudden you sit and say, oh, I'm not that bad after all. You understand me? Interpretation, how do you understand the totality? How do you value that or do not value that? Calling that a crime is also a value judgment. And that's why criminals and society have been fighting with each other. Look, smoking marijuana is a crime in the US, right? Okay, because you call it a crime, you treat it as a crime. What if tomorrow they legalize marijuana? Will those people be considered as criminals anymore? And all of a sudden by tomorrow, the crimes they go down by more than 100, 200, whatever percent there might be. And all of a sudden, there are not too many crimes anymore. So you see that this politics of labeling, politics of treating certain people as criminals or not. And then you become sad or you become happy when there are too many or too few of them. Interpretation again, value judgment.
In terms of politics now, you said something very interesting earlier in that one of the things you noticed about Trinidad and Tobago was the sort of division we have between two of our major political parties, how they can sometimes also be defined along lines of ethnicity and race. What comments would you like to make on that?
I do not want to side with any side because I have been here only for a few days, a few weeks, and I have seen this kind of divisions already, not just in political parties, even people on the street. I'm quite aware of this kind of conflicts right away because I have been so many other countries. I have seen many of these. In a way, it is part of life when you see so many divisions and diversification. You cannot have a society which has so mixed in so many things and expect that people there should be unified and should love each other, live happily forever after. It doesn't work like that. The more complex you have, the more diverse that you have, the chance is you will end up having this kind of conflicts and divisions. As long as you have the population here, they are divided between the African people, I mean those people with African descent or of Indian descent, they are more or less the big two groups in the country. Even within each group, for example, even within those of Indian descent, they are also divided too, among those who are Muslims and among those who are Hindus and among those who are Christian and all that. Even among the Indian population here in TT, and the same thing too, for example, in of African descent. So it's also true for many other groups. So in a way, that is not so surprising because you are very diverse. It's not that Trinidad is a homogeneous population, and then you don't have too much of this kind of division. But that is quite natural in a way. If you don't have this kind of division, if your population is homogeneous, but then you will have other divisions, but not on the basis of ethnic or racial divisions. So if you could eliminate this division, don't think that tomorrow this could be a paradise. You will have other divisions between rich and poor, maybe. You understand me? So each culture wherever I go, even in the US, you have a lot of divisions over here. They may not have the same divisions that you have, but they have different form of divisions. Corruption in the US is tremendous, but they don't have the corruption that you have. But you don't have the corruption that they have, but you are corrupt in this way, they are corrupt in different way. But each side is going to say, I'm not corrupt because I'm not corrupt this way, but they don't talk about this one. You, just like A, B, C, and D that I told you. So be careful about all this kind of data, interpretation, manipulation that you are. So don't look at the problems from a larger perspective, from multiple sides, and you can see that things is not what you think. In a way, this is part of life, but in another way, you have to resolve the problem. Just as I said at the beginning, don't be like Venezuela. So if you keep fighting like this, and you will not able to resolve many of the problems. But unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends on your own ideology. And some people enjoy fighting. Some people they just enjoy fighting.
In that time, what do you intend to do to gather your data and your research and so on?
Normally, when I go to a country, I speak to a lot of different people, not just those who are well educated, those who are the elites, but also those who are not. So because I do not want to exclude any of them.
This will be made available, the information you compile and analyze, will this be made available in a scientific journal, in a book, perhaps? What will be the format of presentation?
Normally, I do not mention the names, or I do not mention any specific person. I'm interested more in visions and theories. So if I talk to you, I'm not that interested in terms of what you have to say as a person, but I'm more interested in the totality of the picture. What is the tendency of the culture, the society? Also, I'm not that interested in the viewpoint of one person. I'm only interested, after I talk to so many people, I have some rough idea what is the generalities of this culture, of this society, and then I shall propose my new visions and my new theories based on what I have observed. But no one person, no one group can satisfy my methodology, because my methodology is total. Is covering the entire picture, and also I don't focus on TT. By the end of my tour, I have all these kind of ideas about the totality of the humanity. I'm not interested in I just come here only because I want to understand TT. No, just like I go to other countries, I don't come to just for that country. My ultimate goal is for unified theories of everything in the entire universe, not just on Earth. And I have proposed more than 128 visions and theories so far. So my thinking, that's why I don't fall into the trap that some people have been falling, or you have mentioned some of them too. I don't side with any side, and this is too small for me. I get out of that trap and boxes.
That's a very interesting point. You're being able to take a couple steps back and look
yes.
at the forest for the trees, as they say.
Yes, exactly.
With that in mind, I don't think I have any more questions. Is there anything else you would like to add that I may not have asked you, that I may have forgotten to ask?
My answer is that I do not have any question to ask you at this point. And I also think that it's not good for me to ask you a question like that, because any question that I ask, or any question asked to you, is not value free. Questioning in many cases is not innocent. So if I put my question to you, that is also a potential contamination to what you are going to tell me, because now I am turning the table into the other side and trying to pursue my own interest by asking you some questions.
No, not ask me questions, but is there anything you'd like to see that I may not have asked?
Yes.
Now is your time to say anything.
Yes. I also include that kind of questioning too. So because my way of research is a bit different. I try not to impose my interest and my values on others. I'm more interested in what they are interested in asking me, and what kind of values, beliefs, tendencies that they may have. I try not to contaminate or distort as much as possible in the process.
Okay. That is more or less it. I got a really nice cross-section of what you had to say, everything ranging from global politics. Let me just